Tonight's episode of Legacy Battle is brought to you by NeoraFit.
They say pictures are worth 1,000 words. Let's look at some of the amazing results that NeoraFit users have enjoyed. Check out this guy. And look at what Neora has done for this woman.
That's impressive.
And check this out. NeoraFit goes way beyond weight management. Look at all these extra benefits. Neora also features plant-based skincare and hair restoration products. Contact my good friend Vaughn at yvonstillneora.com and check out all the ways Neora can improve your life.
Enjoy the show. Good evening. Welcome to Legacy Battle. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and join that Facebook group. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, please contact us in the comments section. I am Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. Here with me tonight, Penn State Collegiate All-Star Kevin Adams, Ball State athlete Paul Habicott, and from the baseball team known as the Billings Mustangs, Manny Correa. Our special guest tonight is a member of the Stanford Athletic Hall of Fame, where he was a two-time first-team All-Pac-10 player, setting a record in wins, strikeouts, and innings pitched. He pitched 1.5 seasons with the Pirates, but is most remembered, of course, for his time with the Baltimore Orioles, where he led baseballs and wins by a lefty in the 1989 season, which is, of course, famous for the Baltimore Orioles, the Why Not season. In fact, I even watched the team video today on YouTube. It's still on there. I love how that pretty much opened with you writing a letter to your father. That was great. But he was also a member of the 1984 United States baseball team, winning a bronze medal at the World Cup of Baseball. Ladies and gentlemen, Major League Baseball pitcher Jeff Ballard.
Hey, guys.
For joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
I'm a long way from all of you out here in Montana. So thank God for technology, right? We couldn't do this otherwise.
Absolutely. You're probably an hour behind us too, right?
Two
hours. Okay. All right.
Wow.
Well, as always, after the debate, we're going to have a Q&A with Jeff about his career. Tonight's debate is the greatest 300-game winner from the 1980s on. So as long as they pitched in the 80s, at some point, they've made our list tonight. Now, there were actually 10 pitchers that qualified. We cut that down to 8. We took out Roger Clemens for, let's just say, obvious reasons. And Don Sutton ended up being, I guess, the one who drew the short straw and didn't make the final 8 cut. So we're going to start tonight with Randy Johnson.
Randy Johnson, nicknamed the Big Unit. Played 22 seasons in the MLB from 88 to 2009. He played for 6 teams, spent most of his career with Seattle and Arizona. Also played for Montreal, Houston, and the Yanks, as well as the Giants. Finished with a career record of 303 wins, 166 losses. With those 303 victories, that's the 5th most in MLB history. 4,875 strikeouts, placed him 2nd all-time behind Nolan Ryan and 1st among left-handers. He holds 5 of the 7 highest single-season strikeout totals by a left-hander in modern history. Johnson was a 10-time All-Star. He's won a Cy Young Award 5 times, only second to Roger Clemens, which, Roger Clemens, I don't know, that's got to be asterisks next to his. And he's one of only 2 pitchers, the other being Greg Maddux, to win the award in 4 consecutive seasons. In 1999, he joined Pedro Martinez and Gaylord Perry in winning it in both the AL and the NL per game. He is one of 18 pitchers in history to record against a win against all 30 MLB teams. He's been the ER leader 4 times in his career. He's 9-time strikeout leader. Won a Triple Crown in 2002, World Series 2001. Also the MVP of that World Series. He was one of the tallest baseball players in the history of MLB, 6'10". crazy dominant fastball. It was consistently around 100 miles per hour and clocked in at 102. And who can forget in 2001 when a bird flew directly in the path of the ball that he threw? What are the odds of that? The ball clocked the bird, and basically it just combusted the bird. Like the bird disappeared, and it was just like a cloud of feathers. And the announcer, commentators were like, "It's a sea of feathers." And if you watch the video, it's insane. Like, I feel bad for that bird because getting hit by a 100-mile-per-hour fastball like that. But so yeah, he also had a hard slider. He did struggle early on in his career, though. He had only won 64 games by the age of 30, which I was kind of shocked by that. He went on to lead the league in strikeouts 9 times after that, and got the ERA record 4 times, winning percentage 4 times, complete games 4 times, leading in all those categories. Finished his career with a 646 winning percentage, and about 65% of that was wins, ranking him sixth among left-handers with at least 200 decisions. 8th in games started at 603, 9th in innings pitched. He finished first in strikeouts per 9 innings with 10.67, 3rd in hits batsman, and 10th fewest hits allowed in 9 innings pitched at 7.24. He was elected into the Hall of Fame in 2015, first year eligibility, got 97% of the votes. First person to wear the Diamondbacks jersey in the Hall of Fame, and he's one of only 5 pitchers in the Hall of Fame that has more strikeouts than innings pitched. Best pitcher out there.
Johnson was intense. I mean, this guy threw at his own kid in a father-son game, right?
Yeah.
But, Jeff, obviously I want your thoughts on Randy Johnson, but let me ask you about his stare. I mean, is that maybe like part of the intimidation factor that batters would have with Randy Johnson?
I just think his overall persona was a good factor for him, a big factor for his success. I mean, obviously, exceptional stuff, but we didn't call him a big unit on the bench in Baltimore. We referred to him as Ichabod, but that was more of an inside thing. Now, I played against Randy at Stanford. He was at USC, so I've seen Randy throw, when he was really young and raw, all the way up through when he was with Seattle and then onward, while I was playing. You're right. He had marginal control early in his career. He at Stanford, the more you yelled at him from the bench and got on him, the tougher he got, because he'd get focused and mad, and then he seemed to be able to throw strikes, and he threw it so hard no one could hit it. But if you just kind of let him die out there, he all of a sudden would walk a guy, and then he'd start losing his confidence, start aiming it, and all of a sudden you'd see 97, 98 drop down to mid 80s and just trying to throw strikes. And so that was really, we beat him several times at Stanford, but that was because he was wild. And I think the story really that I always heard from what was going on is that he had a conversation with Nolan Ryan, and somewhere probably about the end of the 80s, heading into the 90s, that really allowed him to free himself up mentally. And then at that point is when he really started becoming dominant. So I do not know what the conversation was, but Nolan would be a great guy for him to talk to, because Nolan was probably fairly wild early in his career compared to what he developed into. So really great resource for Randy. And I think, he really took it to heart. And boy, once he figured it out, he was filthy when he was out there, for sure.
Paul, with Randy playing, let's say, in a bigger ballpark for a lot of his career there in Seattle and Arizona, does that maybe inflate his numbers a little bit?
Piler. He loses points because he's cruel to animals, cruel to birds. I mean, that's – I don't my guy, once we get to my guy, that's a notch in my guy's belt. He treats animals nice.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our second pitcher. That's Phil Niekro.
Phil Niekro. Okay, that's me. Nickname Nuxie. Phil pitched for 24 seasons in the major league. That is absolutely phenomenal for a pitcher. Obviously, it was because of his knuckleball. Doesn't put a strain on the arm. And I don't know if you guys ever had tried to hit a knuckleball. it's really difficult to do. Pete Rose once said, you spend a whole week trying to get your swing down, and then you face this guy and you're screwed up for another week. So he really had some stuff. He was a 5-time Gold Glove winner. He was on made the All-Star team I think at least 5 times. He's one of those guys that won 300 games, obviously. Earned run average a little higher than what some of the other guys had, 3.35, but it's still respectable. And the strikeouts, 3,342. And that knuckleball was just amazing. I think one of his catchers one time said that he threw a knuckleball and he couldn't get a glove on it, hit his shin guard. Guy swung at it, was strike 3. The ball rolled out to the third baseman. He picked it up, threw the guy out at first base. That's how much it moved. Phil Niekro had 121 wins after the age of 40. That is amazing. He's the type of guy that every pitching staff needs. He eats up innings. He may not have had a whole bunch of wins. His winning percentage wasn't all that great, but it was good for the teams that he pitched on. And it was always great to have somebody who had something different from the rest of the staff. Everybody likes to say, well, you had to mix a lefty in there with your starters and a hard-throwing righty, maybe a crafty lefty. But this knuckleball was just, it's hot, and you don't see him every day. You don't see that kind of pitching every day. So it makes it difficult to hit. That's what I got on Mr. Niekro. Knucksy.
Well, what I will say is that 3.35 ERAs, that's really good for a knuckleballer, because if I recall correctly, Tim Wakefield and Charlie Hoff are 4+, if I'm recalling correctly, on that ERA. So that's very impressive.
Did they play as many seasons as he did, though? You always remember the knuckleballers. Dickey, Wakefield, Huff. Didn't Wakefield play like over 20 something seasons?
Yeah, at least. So.
Maybe the stats pad up then, I guess.
So, Jeff, what are your thoughts on a knuckleballer? It's actually pretty rare in the majors, and when they have a good fastball to go with that, it makes them extremely hard to hit.
Yeah, well, Phil obviously really set the bar pretty high for knuckleballers. The hardest thing for them and why their ERAs are typically higher is because they walk people. It's hard for them to control the movement of the ball, especially on some days. It's moving all over the place, and it's hard for them to throw enough strikes, and the hitters get patient because they don't like swinging at it anyway. And then they typically get runners on base. So you're going to have a higher ERA, but when they are on, certainly throwing strikes and mixing, really even an average fastball in, it's pretty impressive. I got to experience. Wakefield was a roommate of mine in Buffalo in AAA with the Pirates, and so I got firsthand experience of what a knuckleballer goes through. But with Phil, pretty impressive what he did over all those years. I like throwing a knuckleball. It's fun. I never worked on it or really developed into anything I used much. But it's impressive they can sit out there and throw the same pitch over and over and over and be able to have the success that they do. But they're not. It's not pitching to me. It's tricking the hitters, right? I mean, it's a little bit different. Would be if you're going to ask for a negative read for a knuckleball when you're trying to decide who is the best pitcher, it'd be really hard to choose a knuckleballer, although they are incredibly unique and really fun to watch for sure.
Kevin, I know you were a Wakefield fan back in the day. I know. So, I mean, in your opinion, do you think the knuckleball is the hardest pitch to hit?
Well, I mean, if you play any of the gaming systems, the knuckleball, you always got me on it, man. It drives me insane. You can't predict where the knuckleball is really going to go. I mean, it comes in looking like it's going to be one pitch, and it ends up being a knuckleball and it goes into a spot that you're not expecting it. By far, Wakefield, like you said, I mean, I always knew Wakefield because of the knuckleball, and definitely it's definitely one of the hardest pitches to hit. And I don't know, I've seen if that's the pitcher's main pitch, they seem to last longer in the league too. Wakefield pitched pretty long too, and that was his main pitch. I don't know if it's because it's not really as fast as your normal, other pitches, and it saves your arm a little bit. But man,
typically don't need Tommy Johns.
No, it's really pretty mild on your arm. The thing about the knuckleball, I call it the most frustrating pitch to hit because you don't throw it very hard, and hitters are geared for 95, right? So you got a guy lobbing it in there, and it's frustrating, and you want to hit it, and then it starts moving on you, and you feel dumb. As a hitter, it makes you look dumb, and that's never. Hitters don't like that. I can tell you that much. So.
I've slammed numerous video game controllers because of that pitch.
You could almost categorize it as like an ephus pitch. I mean, to be honest, I mean, it's just coming out like, really slow. But so let's move on to our next pitcher. That's Greg Maddux, and I'm representing Maddux tonight. So I'm going to say this: he has more wins than any player we are talking about tonight. So he does have the win total here tonight with 351. And a 3.16 ERA, 4 Cy Youngs, 4-time ERA leader, 8-time All-Star. He was a pitching coach for USA in 2013, so that's quite an honor. But what made him special is he wasn't a fastball guy. I mean, he had a fastball earlier in his career, of course, was pretty good. But the fact is, even more towards his later years, he was only averaging 86 miles per hour on his fastball. So he just had better command than probably any pitcher we're talking about tonight. But he could hit the corners of the plate, and he would outthink batters. He's very smart up there at the plate. Not only could he pitch, but he's an 18-time Gold Glove winner. That is most all-time at any position, and he also has the record for putouts by a pitcher. So just an amazing fielder. And then I just want to give you guys some just crazy stats. Listen to this. So he faced 20,421 batters. If you take out intentional walks, he only 4-pitched walked 140 batters. That's crazy. And he's the only pitcher to win 15-plus games in 17 straight seasons. And only 5 pitchers in history have posted an ERA under 1.65. And he's done it twice, 2 times. He had 72.1 innings pitched without a walk in a row. That's second all time. And he threw a 76-pitch, 9-inning game and never got a batter to 3 balls, and only 2 batters got to 2 balls. And in his career, he pitched 236 games without a walk. So when it comes to control tonight, I'm obviously not going to put Max up there with the fastball of a Johnson or a Ryan. The only guy who maybe comes close with the command maybe is Glavine. But Maddux just a superior pitcher. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Maddux? I mean, obviously, probably the greatest fielding pitcher of all time.
Well, I think for him it goes way beyond even his fielding. First thought I really have when I think of Greg Maddux is cerebral. I mean, the guy was highly intelligent out of the mound and had such a great feel for what he needed to do. But the one point you made about, well, we're not talking fastball, I'd argue that point because it may not be 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but his fastball was lethal because he could do so many different things with it. He cut it, he sank it. He throw it up and in, he throw it down and away, but he would dot the location. Command is probably better than anybody in the history of the game, if you ask me, about his command for throwing strikes. And it's not just throwing it down the middle for throwing strikes. He absolutely brought a paintbrush out nearly every time he took the mound and lived on the corners. And he just was so fun to watch as a pitcher and how he handled himself on the mound. It was just crazy what he could do with the baseball, and the amount of movement he got, to me, is abnormal. I mean, what he was able to do with the rotations and the grips, and how he would get the ball to started at the lefty with a fastball and have it cut back to the inside corner. I mean, that's hard to do. I don't think people that haven't pitched or at a very high level would have a hard time understanding how that's hard. That doesn't happen. There's nobody else out there in the game even today that throws that pitch like that very well, unless it's like submarine type pitcher. But overhand guy like him, phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal.
Manny, you played minor league ball. What does it mean to a team to have a pitcher on the mound that you got a chance to win every time he's out there?
Yeah, that pumps you up. You figure, hey, you relax at the plate because you don't have to worry about scoring a whole lot of runs. You're gonna do whatever it takes to get up early, and you're willing to sacrifice hit behind the runner, whatever it takes, because you have a good shot of winning. So hey, it's a lot more relaxed, and again, someone like that, like Jeff was saying, very very smart pitcher. One thing I think that the sinker is, people don't realize it was pretty lethal, and he would tell people, he would tell someone, "I'm throwing you a sinker," they still couldn't hit. That's how good his stuff was. And of course, as a Pirate fan, both him and Glavine, I always thought they got a little bit of leeway from the umpires, if you know what I mean.
Wasn't that your pitch, Jeff? Aren't you a sinker ball pitcher?
Yeah.
Jeff
absolutely.
understands.
Yeah.
They
knows
absolutely
the
have
sinker.
big zones.
Yeah.
That's Greg Maddux out there. I mean, he earned that zone, and the better you get, and the more reputation you have for command, umpires aren't going to get in the way of that very often. That's for sure.
Well, the Braves never lost so long. Like, they have 4 guys in a row coming out there that get so much respect. But
Absolutely.
let's move on to our next. Oh, go ahead, Kev. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say 2 things. So the Braves at that time, their rotation was Maddox, Glavine, Avery, and Schmaltz. I mean, that is 4 great, decent pitchers for a rotation. But you had mentioned an interesting stat. Well, I also have one too, just to kind of what Paul usually does, try to defend his guy.
Here we
My
go.
guy, Randy Johnson, 1,500 more strikeouts than Maddox in over 100 less games than Maddox. Leave that on the table for you.
Normally I don't side with Kevin, but Kevin's got a point, Mike. You're the host and you get this Maddox guy. I mean, get out of here with this. I can tell Jeff's feeling you too. Jeff's feeling it, but hurry up and move on to my guy, because you guys are all forgetting about my guy here.
Yeah, let's move on to the other Atlanta Brave pitcher tonight. That's Tom Glavine.
It's funny how Mike gets all these guys that have the greatest stats so he can like cherry pick. But anyway, I got to talk about Glavine because Jeff mentioned him. Manny mentioned him, and you mentioned him, Mike. And happy early birthday to my man Glavine here, born 3/25/66, 2014 Hall of Fame inductee. That I know of, no fancy nicknames for my guy Glavine. And he kind of puts me in the mind of Jeff in that he just showed up at the ballpark and pitched. He's not as emotional as a Maddox or a Smoltz. He's just a hard worker. So I know, Mike, you're going to be voting for the winner here. If you vote for Maddox and you don't vote for Glavine, you're kind of disrespecting Jeff, really, in a lot of ways. 'Cause this guy's just like Jeff. So think about it while I go over some of these things. And also think about he was never cruel to birds like Johnson was. So get out of here, Kevin. All right, so the stats. I didn't go – Mike's got all these, like, crazy stats, and that's what guilty people do when they know they got a weak argument. They get all these like little fancy stats. But if I had a little more money, I'd be sipping on some of Tom Glavine's 2008 charity wine, Cabernet Glavillon, which went to his Cure Childhood Cancer Foundation. But unfortunately, I can't find it. It was last available at Wally's Wine and Spirits in Beverly Hills for $14. So take that and put that in your stat bucket there, Mike. This is a left-handed pitcher entering the league in 1987 with the Braves. He's got 22 years in the league with them and the Mets. 305 wins and 203 losses. That's like that's a win percentage of around 600 there. Finishing in an ERA of about 3.54. Impressive average of 34 games each season, 56 complete games, 25 shutouts, 2 Cy Youngs, 5 MVPs, and played in 6 All-Star games. I think he was voted about 10 total. He's got 5 20-win seasons. 1995 MVP. He gave up 350, 1,500 walks, but he had 20. What didn't you hear? My damage allowed?
No. You were going in and out. You're fine now.
Okay, damage allowed 356. It's probably you messing with my connection because you don't want to lose. 1,500 walks, but he 2607 career strikeouts. But like, I saw Mike in there. He was talking about Maddox's Gold Glove. I can't probably compete with that with Glavine, but dude could hit. 4-time Silver Slugger Award, winner of the 1995 Silver Slugger Award, finishing in at .186 average, which basically matches and surpasses you and Kevin's softball stats. So this guy, he's quiet. He's a hard worker. And you're going to probably be slayed for the glam and stuff like that. But this dude's like Jeff, man. He got the job done.
All right. Heck of a hockey player, too, I might add. Glavin
Yeah.
was.
I didn't have time to get into all that.
So, Jeff, your opinions on Glavin and this might be not a true statement, but I'll ask you, since Maddox, I guess, would be considered the ace, does that mean that, Glavin might have had some better pitching matchups?
Well, it's a good question. It does happen, right? But the problem is they all got good pitching matchups. When you got 4 number ones in your rotation throughout their careers, it's pretty hard to decide who had the better matchups. They all were just great pitchers. The thing about that Glavin that in my mind that really sticks out was just he was a workhorse. I mean, the guy showed up every day. He pitched a lot of innings. But the other thing, when you watched him pitch, I was always kind of amazed at him because on TV, maybe it's the angle of the camera, whatever. You never really saw this great ball movement, when he pitched like you do with the Maddox or some other guys. You didn't see a filthy breaking ball that he had, but he never gave in. I mean, it's 3-0 and he's still throwing it on the paint, and he just was relentless in not giving in to hitters. And he walked more guys certainly than Maddox would, but at the same time, he's getting out of innings and having very good success. I think Tom had a really good changeup that went with that fastball. He'd like to live on that outside corner and mixing speeds up there a lot, and then he could bust you in. I appreciate you throwing me in the same sentence with him, but he was a lot better than I ever was, and he had the ability to go in because he still had some good velocity. Tom, if I recall, he lived around 90, I believe, maybe a little more. At times, certainly with today's guns, he would live in that area for the radar guns they use today. But he just was relentless and just such a bulldog on the mound. What a great compliment he was to that staff.
To kill Mets or Braves fans to see him in a Mets uniform. That's all.
Yeah,
all I could
absolutely.
think towards the end of his career is like, him going to the Mets. That kills Atlanta. But so let's move on to our vote of round 1 here. Can't vote for your own. That's always been the rules of the show. And I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm going to start it out. I'm voting for Tom Glavin. So
That's my
that
boy
makes you
right
happy,
there.
Paul.
Nice.
So, Paul, who are you taking?
Hey, man, one turn deserves another. I vote for Maddox.
Okay. Kevin?
That is insane to me, guys. Randy
I
Johnson.
can't vote for Glavin there.
I know. Well, Johnson, man, had way more strikeouts than all of them. But anyways, I'm gonna have to go with Glavin. Glavin won the MVP of the World Series. Maddox did not. So I'm gonna go with Glavin.
All right. Manny?
Yep, I like the bulldog style that Maddox had too. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Maddox.
Okay. So that puts you on you, Jeff.
I'm the tiebreaker, huh?
Yeah, you can still
Well,
vote for anybody.
Well, yeah, tiebreaker if I pick one of those two. The thing is, you're asking who the best pitcher was, right? And a lot of that, to me, is how do you define what the best pitcher? Kevin's going to have his obvious statement about who the best pitcher is, who strikes out the most, and he likes to bring that up with Randy. He's a power guy, for sure, dominant, and he won plenty of games, but. When I think about pitcher, I look at a guy that has the ability to really live on the corners, really change speeds, has a lot of movement, offers a lot, and can just really outthink hitters. And so it's really hard for me to get past Greg Maddox when I look at that list. They're all incredibly good pitchers. I would take any one of them. I know it's killing you, isn't it, Paul? Well, he's the host of the show. He's the one that asked me. What am I going to do? Right? I got to live with Greg Maddox. I've always been in his camp. He was my favorite guy to watch pitch. Just really appreciated his skill level. So I got to put my vote there.
All right, let's move on to round 2. Kevin with another flamethrower starting us out. Nolan Ryan.
Starting to think that my picks were the wrong ones, y'all. Y'all don't know what baseball is evidently. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, Nolan Ryan, nicknamed the Ryan Express, even has an expressway named after him. Played a record 27 years. Man, you had mentioned your player played, I think it was 24 you had mentioned. while Ryan went 3 more years, played 27 years over 4 different decades. Man started in the 60s, played in the 70s, 80s, and finished off, I believe it was 93. So he played some in the 90s too. He pitched for the Mets, Angels, Astros, Rangers. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1999, right-handed pitcher. He was consistently pitching around 100 miles per hour. I definitely like the fastball pitchers. He maintained that speed throughout his whole career too, which is pretty impressive. Usually the older you get, the slower your pitch gets, but he maintained it pretty much throughout his career. He also had a crazy curveball. He finished with a record of 324, 292 losses, was an 8-time All-Star. He had 5,714 strikeouts, which is a record with a big margin. He leads the runner-up, which is my other pitcher, Randy Johnson, by 839. On a sad note, though, I will say he did have a lot of walks. He did walk a lot of batters to the tune of about 2,800. So he did have a lot of walks.
That's over 100 a year, right? 27 years. Yeah.
And that was about 50% more hitters walked than any other pitcher in MLB history, which is unfortunate. But that doesn't take away from what he did for the game and his stats outside of that. He leads in the lowest batting average allowed, only 204. He is one of only 5 pitchers to be inducted into the Hall of Fame with more strikeouts than innings pitched, which I also had mentioned Randy Johnson for that too. Both my pitchers are one of only 5, just throwing that out there. He is one of only 3 players in MLB history to have his jersey retired by 3 different teams. He had his jersey retired by Houston, Texas, and the Angels. He leads the MLB records for the most no-hit games with 7. Kind of shocked that he never won a Cy Young Award because he definitely has some decent stats. His career ERA was 3.19, second in games started, 773, 7th in shutouts with 61, tied for 14th in wins with 324. Like I said, he's an 8-time All-Star, won the World Series in 1969. He's a 2-time NL ERA leader, 11-time strikeout leader. He's also in the Houston and Texas Hall of Fame and on the MLB All-Century. And then he had the lowest batting average allowed at 204, like I had mentioned before. And he had 26 seasons with at least 1 win, which is another record in the MLB. He had crazy fastball, just like Johnson. Won a lot of games, a lot of strikeouts. Great pitcher.
Great nickname with the Ryan Express there, too. At 43 years old, Nolan Ryan takes a line drive to the face from Bo Jackson. Still gets Bo Jackson out. He stays in the game bleeding, pitches 7 innings, licking his own blood off for like a couple of innings. Ryan is just insane. Jeff, the walks, yeah, he's definitely up there in walks, maybe a little bit of control issue through here and there, but still just one of the all-time greats, and the longevity is incredible. What's your thoughts on Nolan Ryan?
Well, Kevin, you left out his height and weight. I mean, you're the stat man. It's hard to believe you missed that. with all that you threw out there. But yeah, I mean, obviously with that long a career, you got a lot to talk about. But he, I was so lucky that I, played when I did with the players I got to watch play, and Nolan was one. I actually pitched a game against Nolan Ryan, and it was so fun to watch him throw. Intensity is really a word I'd use to describe him. It's hard to see that intensity in very many other pitchers that he had. The only other pitcher that even came close to me was Roger Clemens and his intensity on the mound, and Nolan is just incredible for the velocity he was able to maintain. As you mentioned in your stat deal, Kevin, was that he was in at 46, he's still bringing it, and just to think that you could play, he played in so many different decades. It's crazy. Back when he's with the '69 Mets, he's still playing, well into the '90s. I mean, how many people did that came that he played against that came and went in this league in the MLB? Just tons. So it's just such an impressive career. very fun guy to watch pitch. Hard to say enough about him. And I think he's been a great ambassador for the game. I think Nolan Ryan will always have an air about him. There's that aura. He's one of the hardest throwers to ever play. I think in the real reading, if he was using today's guns, that he all the radar that he had was off the slow gun that we all had through the time I was playing, and where it was reading the pitch as it crossed the plate, and he's still hitting over 100 miles an hour. I mean, I think he would have the hardest velocity of anybody in the history of the game with today's gun, in my opinion. That's certainly just an opinion, but he back in his prime for sure. He was fun to watch. One of the funnest to watch, just get out and try to dominate a game. Pretty incredible.
Dominate a game, and he wasn't going to back down from anybody.
Robin Ventura found out about
Ventura
that.
moment. Exactly.
He's the wrong guy to charge. I know that much. You don't charge him. You just take it in the shoulder and head to first, because it's a losing battle when you're going to hit the mound there.
Exactly. All right, let's move on to we just talked about the Mets there for a second. Tom Seaver.
Yeah, that's my guy, right? Tom Seaver. Before I get to Tom, I'll just give you a quick story. We used to go out to Shea Stadium all the time when I was younger, and there was a guy warming up in the bullpen, and he was popping the glove like I'd never heard before. So we ran over there to see what it was. It was Nolan Ryan. He had some velocity even back then, and that was amazing to see and hear. Tommy Terrific. All right, Tom Terrific. He right-handed pitcher. When his mechanics were just almost perfect. I don't know if you ever watched. He dropped down. His right knee would be dirty, because he'd get down low and he'd just fire that ball. And he's another competitor. I mean, he and Walter Johnson, I believe, are the only two guys with over 300 wins, over 3,000 strikeouts, and an ERA under 3. Good stuff. Tommy pitched the Mets into the World Series back in '69. He was their man. He was the guy they went to, and he came through big for him. And I remember, again, going to Shea Stadium on Sundays, especially when the Pirates were in. It was like going to a carnival. You got tons of people there. Everybody's excited. Tom Seaver facing guys like Willie Stargell, Roberto Clemente, Al Oliver. That was pretty awesome. And, he got the best of them. I have a stat here where he hit only 60 or 76 batters, all right, which is pretty good considering how many he faced. And I remember one of those at Shea Stadium. He hit Manny Sanguian in the leg, and I thought a fight was going to break out, but Manny didn't charge. Manny had some boxing background, so I kind of thought that would have been interesting. But Tom had 12 All-Star appearances. He had a World Series championship in '69. He had 3 Cy Young awards. That's pretty good. Rookie of the Year also. And he led the National League in wins 3 times and in the ERA 3 times. So his stats were there, but his stuff was pretty good and a lot of fun to watch. Didn't back down from anyone. And I think Tom was one of the best, maybe a little bit under the radar. I don't know if I can match him up with Nolan Ryan, but I think Tom is up there. He's one of the better ones I've seen.
I think he's the most underrated pitcher we're talking about tonight, in my opinion. And not to mention, of all the pitchers we're talking about tonight, he has the lowest ERA. So, that's very important. Jeff, what are your thoughts on Tom Seaver? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I had to jump in there, but the Mets weren't very good, especially. They were not a very good team. So for Tom to get wins, he had to keep that ERA down. He had to keep the runs down. So Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the '69 World Series. It's interesting World Series from where I'm from. A little factoid that you would know, but the Orioles were playing the Mets in that World Series, and there was 2 players from Billings, Montana, that were in that World Series. Dave McNally, who's the most well-known, and a pitcher for the Mets who was injured at the time but was in uniform, a pitcher named Les Rohr, and both from Billings, and both left-handed pitchers. And it's just interesting that a little town like this would have two guys in one of the most famous World Series out there, because the Mets were so underrated going into that series, and then beating the Orioles handily in that was pretty amazing. As far as Tom Seaver, Manny, I think you really said it all. My thoughts on him when I think about him was that he was a competitor. He didn't back down for people. When he pitched, he was kind of, I'm just coming at you. He kind of just kept coming at you. That was really his style. He is the most underrated one we're talking about. I don't think there's much flashy about Tom. He threw hard, but not incredibly hard. Certainly firm, had the good four-seam fastball, lived up in the zone, and was very tough on hitters. But there's nothing in my mind that sticks out about any one thing with him pitching, other than he just kept coming at you. And it was impressive. His career certainly was a big component of all the Mets' success, for sure.
All right, let's move on to Steve Carlton. He's known as Lefty, so that might tell you what arm he threw with. But another four-time Cy Young winner. And let me tell you about 1972. The Phillies, they only won 59 games that year. 27 of them were won by Steve Carlton. That is winning 46% of his team's games. I'm pretty sure that's a record. I haven't seen anything better than that. To win that, he went 27-10 that year. So to win 27 games on a team like that is just, it's crazy. But he's the last National League pitcher to win 25 games. So that's actually kind of sad if you think about it, that we haven't had anybody in the National League hit 25 in that long. He's the last pitcher to pitch 300 innings in a season. All the saving the arms these days. He was a two-time World Series winner, of course, 10-time All-Star, 1972 Triple Crown winner, which means he led in wins, ERA, and Ks. And he's fourth all-time in strikeouts. Maybe Kevin will like that. And he's third if we don't count Clemens. So just saying. So Willie Stargell said that hitting against Steve Carlton was like trying to drink a coffee with a fork. So that's pretty crazy. He was very good at picking people off too. Had 144 pickoffs, which is most all time by 62. So he could definitely trick you on that one. He led the league in complete games 3 times, Ks 5 times, and he pitched 5 times, wins 4 times. And who could forget, he has one of the most famous beans in history when he plunked Al Bundy on Married with Children. So that was, a little Hollywood for him there. Al trash talked him. Of course he's going to throw at him. So, nobody on this list, maybe, Seaver played for some bad teams, but Carlton played for some good teams, but he also played for a lot of bad teams. So I like him. I like him as a pitcher, of course, and I think that he might have retired one too many times, but other than that, he definitely deserves to be on this list tonight. So, Jeff, what are your thoughts on Steve Carlton?
I guess as I remember watching him pitch, the one thing that stands out to me is slider. That guy had a filthy slider. And he got guys swinging at that in the dirt as much as any pitcher in the history of the game, in my view. He really had a nasty one. Coming from the left side, he was incredibly hard to hit. Threw firm, threw definitely hard enough. And I never knew him personally. I've heard people talk about him. I think one of the things that helped him, I think he was kind of a prick. And I think that is just, when he's on the mound, I think it suited him well. And it made him that competitor, gave him that edge when he's out there. And man, he certainly threw up some numbers. The one thing that's interesting, what you brought up, Michael, is the 27 wins. And you talk about how it's hard to believe we haven't had anybody win in 25. I'll actually be shocked if we see anybody win close to 25 or more going on in the game with what they're doing to it now with regards to pitchers. The starters don't stand long enough to get decisions for that many decisions. 27-10. 37 decisions he got. That's crazy. You just don't see that much anymore. The starters are 5-6 inning guys. We know how many games go and are decided after the 5th inning. and there's lots. And so I think it's a bullpen kind of by committee kind of game now, and how they try to get all the matchups that they need to get. So it'll be interesting if that changes. Baseball, like any sport, can be cyclical in their thinking. So we'll see if they come back around to where they start stretching guys out more and going back to the kind of the old school mentality. But as it sits now, it's really hard to think that somebody could get to 27 wins again.
I figure the way baseball is trying to speed the game up, they'll cut it down to 7 innings, and then if you pitch 4, you get the win. Who knows?
yeah. So if they did that, that would be a different deal. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our last pitcher, Gaylord Perry.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm trying to knock off Nolan Ryan here, but Ryan Express, Tommy Terrific, lefty or prick. You don't need a nickname when you're rocking Gaylord Perry. Okay, so I had my crack staff research this, and after extensive research, buried in the first line of a Wikipedia page, Gaylord's actually named after a deceased friend of his father who died while having his teeth pulled. I don't know what you do with that, but the irony, I guess, or something to mention, is he's most known for throwing the spitter ball. So I'm going to get the spitter thing right out in the open, because you guys are going to attack it anyway if I don't. He threw a spitter ball. He was in the league for 22 seasons. Yeah, he doctored some baseballs or whatnot, but he didn't get ejected for it until his 21st season. So maybe you could say, different time, different place. Born 9/15/38. This is a 5-time All-Star, and I think some interesting facts, like Mike likes to throw out to sure up his weak picks, is that this guy won a Cy Young in both the National and American League. So there's been other players that have accomplished this since, but he was the first player to do it. He's kind of a journeyman. Played for the Giants, Indians, Rangers, Padres, Rangers again, Yankees, Braves, Mariners, and Royals. That's kind of difficult to be a pitcher, a confident pitcher going to all those teams and putting forth good stats. But people don't know that Gaylord had a normal name brother named Jim, and he was also a good pitcher. They're the second most winning brother pitcher duo, which to my boy Manny over there, Phil Necro and Joe Necro, they have the most wins as a brother crew. So here's the teeth of the stats. You get it? 314 wins, 265 losses, 3.11 ERA, 777 games, 303 complete games. He has a no-hitty in 1968 and 53 shutouts, finished over 3,500 strikeouts, 35-34. And he walked, what Nolan Ryan walked, like 7 million people. He walked 1,379 people, 399 home run allowed, and he was a 6-time MVP. So I know you're going to attack the spitter, and I know you're going to hate on the name Gaylord. And Kevin, don't say anything. Just sit there.
Oh, I got stuff to say, but I'm not going to address the football. I got other stuff to address.
Maybe one of these times Mike will let me pick first on who I want to represent instead of calling me 10 minutes and, saying, here's who you got,
Right. The spitter's no different than, what was it, Eddie Seacock throwing the shine ball. It wasn't like really –
I mean,
it was technically illegal, but it wasn't.
I'm ethically torn here, but like the knuckleball was effective, and it's not cheating. But the spitter, he could do it, and the spitter, from what I understand, was pretty unhittable. So,
Kevin, I'll come to you in a minute. But Jeff, did you ever doctor the ball? We've all seen the movie Major League.
You're not gonna admit that.
Chris,
the interesting thing
whatever.
about baseball is the unwritten rules, right? It's kind of like when you're supposed to hit somebody, right? And it's
right.
Is it legal to do that? Not really. You're not supposed to intentionally hit people, but as far as doctoring the baseball, that's something that's gone on since the dawn of time, I think, as far as baseball goes. Dennis Eckersley, really during my time period, was very proficient at scuffing the ball. We had baseball sitting in the dugout on days he pitched that had the same scuff mark in exactly the same location on every ball that was fouled off, and and you wonder, and you take it out to the umpire, and they're like, I don't know, and they just, umpires don't want to get involved in that unless they really have to. Gaylord was the most notorious for the spitter of anybody that we know out there. I actually had a pitching coach when I was in Rochester, when I got sent down in 91 from the Orioles, and named Dick Bosman, that played with Gaylord Perry. He showed me how he throws the spitter. And I actually finally got the courage in one game to actually throw one out in the mound. And all the umpires, you feel like everybody's looking at you, and you know exactly, well, they're going to throw me out of the game. This is going to be embarrassing. I'm going to make national news. But they're not really paying attention. Gaylord, he got past that uneasiness of everybody think they're looking at him. He just made it where everybody knew he was doing it, but they just couldn't catch him. And it is a nasty pitch. The one thing about a spitter, the break on it is so late in the zone that it is very challenging to hit. And that was one of the reasons that he had so much success. I don't know that Gaylord had incredible stuff. He maybe early in his career, he might have been a firm thrower. I don't know that he was ever a fireball guy. He had probably a pretty good breaking ball, and he had probably a pretty decent fastball. But as he developed that spitter, he became a pitcher that obviously all these teams wanted. Really interesting. You say a journeyman. The one thing about being a journeyman means that you're highly sought after, and that you play with all these different teams. Someone's wanting him every year because, for one, he was able to go long into the game, so you knew you were getting innings out of him, which helped save your staff, and you knew you were getting, a competitor. You knew what you were getting in Gaylord Perry. You played 22 years or however long you play. It's an incredible amount of time. I was shocked to see him on the list for people playing in the 80s, because I remember seeing him when I saw him really pitching on TV back in probably the early 80s. He looked like grandpa to me. I mean, he had gray hair and wrinkled face, and I'm like, how is this guy still pitching? But he figured out a way to get out there and compete. It was really impressive to watch him work. So kind of fun. Definitely one of the characters of the game. I think if you ever had a chance to talk to him, you get just an incredible amount of great stories. I have a feeling quite a big character, I would think.
Kevin, go ahead. 30 seconds.
So dude, he did some shady stuff, man. And the spitball's not the only one. He also did the puff ball. We would get a handful of the rosin, and when you throw the ball, a big puff of smoke would come out around the ball, and that's distracting to the batter. And I think it's an unfair thing to do. And I thought it was kind of funny, though. I saw that he actually reached out to the makers of Vaseline to try and endorse the product for them, and they replied with a postcard saying, "We soothe babies' backsides, not baseballs." And then a former manager had famously quipped that he should be in the Hall of Fame with a tube of KY jelly attached to his plaque because of the shady stuff that he was doing.
Kevin just wants to trash anybody who I got. He's got a whole list of things ready to go. You're a puffball.
But Barbastil, Crisco, and Vagisil he had on his arm or something. And
put snot on the ball.
Hey, got an arm like
whatever works, man.
Yeah, man. We've elected worse presidents.
All right, let's move on to our vote for round two. Manny, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this one is a tough one. I really like Nolan Ryan. I think he did so much for the game. He was a great guy, but man, I used to marvel watching Steve Carlton pitch, and that slider, like Justin, would just disappear. You think he'd be right, and it just disappeared. So I'm going to go with Steve Carlton on this one.
So I'm going to go with Tom Seaver, and I know he wasn't flashy, but in my opinion, for the amount of wins he got for most of the teams he played with, that is really impressive. And if he had been on a team that was, maybe even winning like 85 games a season, he'd have even more wins. So I think he's very impressive. And as I said earlier, I think he's the most underrated pitcher in baseball history. But Paul, go ahead.
Taking the messenger out of it, I'm going with Nolan Ryan. The no-hitters is a big deal to me. I'm 43. I love the fact that he was out there at 43 still hurling. I think Nolan Ryan, when I think of pitchers and when I think back to my youth and who I was excited to get a baseball card about, I think a lot of kids wanted to be Nolan Ryan. I think he was a great pitcher.
Kevin?
Well, obviously, I'm not going to go with the spitball, puffball, Vaseline guy. Sorry, Paul.
You should.
So right now, I'm between Seaver and Carlton. You know, Carlton kind of was a little bit shady himself when it came to fans and media, and refused.
Kevin always goes to the dirt.
He literally refused to talk to media for 2 years.
Can you blame him? I mean, come on.
Granted, yeah, he did. Well, it was Philly, and we all know how Philly fans can be. They threw snowballs at Santa Claus one year. But I'm gonna have to go with Seaver.
Okay. Jeff?
Kevin, I'm surprised you have such an aversion to Vaseline. Really just shocking. But
Makes you wonder.
really does. The thing for me is that, Nolan Ryan, I've always been a big fan of his. And so it's really hard for me to get past the longevity of his career, the magnitude of his career on this list. Steve Carlton, I'd probably put him in second there for me, or close second. But Nolan, I got to give my vote to Nolan Ryan. He's just really been one of my favorite players. I think kids in this day and age still want to be Nolan Ryan. He still has that aura about him.
So that's a tie with Seaver and Ryan at 2. Because Jeff is the special guest and athlete, his vote was the determining factor. So Nolan Ryan will move on to the final vote. Before we get to the final vote, here's tonight's trivia question for a prize. Prior winners, you guys are ineligible. Please place your answer in the group page comments section. Name these actors. I was a player in 8 Men Out and Major League. I was a player in Mr. Baseball in Major League. And I was a player in For Love of the Game in Bull Durham. So if you get all 3 of those actors, we'll get your prize mailed out to you. All right, our final vote is between Greg Maddux and Nolan Ryan, almost opposite pitchers here. You got the Heat and the control guy here. So, Paul, you're up first.
Wait, the question aspect of this?
No. You got to vote for Maddux or Ryan.
Oh, okay. I'm still going Ryan.
Okay.
Still doing Ryan.
Kevin?
Are we? So we are voting for even though it's our own people.
Yeah,
I'm not going to vote for Maddux. Nolan Ryan, the longevity, better fastball, the strikeouts, the no hitters. I gotta go with Nolan Ryan.
Manny?
Yeah, I feel the same way. Nolan did so much, all the strikeouts, all the no hitters, and he did, he did have to work on his control, obviously, but he finally got it going. And so I'm going to go with Nolan Ryan.
I'm going to go for Maddux, and it's not just because I represent him today. It's because I think he is, the people we're talking about, I think he was like the best pure pitcher. Jeff mentioned earlier, this guy was the cerebral assassin. He could beat you a lot of different ways. So, Jeff, your vote, Ryan or Maddux?
Yeah, that's a really tough one for me because, my statement earlier when we were on the first 4 was about, my view, who's the best pitcher. Clearly Maddux to me is the best pitcher in this group, including Nolan Ryan. His command was certainly incredible, and his ability to have so many different pitches that he could throw where he wanted to. He just and his smart ability. Nolan dominant. Just dominant when he come in with the fastball. Curveball was very dominant. He developed, off speed as needed, but his instinct was, I'm going to throw it by you. The problem I have here is that I'm such a huge Nolan Ryan fan, and I just think he is I just love this whole mystique about Nolan Ryan, man. I mean, that guy, above all of the pitchers, just for me, I got to go with him. Just have to do it.
Okay. Tonight's winner, Nolan Ryan. 4 votes to 1. So there you go. Kevin, you get the win. Congrats. All right, let's move into our Q&A. Kevin, you can ask the first question.
Yeah, so how was it in Baltimore and playing in Camden Park and with Cal Ripken Jr.? Kind of what was your experience out there in Baltimore?
Well, to correct you on one thing, unfortunately, I never got to play in Camden Yards. I was a
Oh.
Memorial Stadium guy. My last year was 91. The stadium opened in 92. The new
Okay.
stadium. The best I can tell you is that I had a input in the building of it, just because I was the player rep. I had a lot of great years in Baltimore. Certainly, my heart's there. Coming to the Orioles from Billings was a big deal because Dave McNally had already set the table in Baltimore as being a Billings guy. I think that helped me with the fans there initially. I think they identified with me, following in his footsteps, and it was just such a great place. Tough time to be an Oriole, though, really. Minus the '89 season, we sucked. Just not good. And I was there. I wasn't there in Baltimore when we started '88 off with 21 straight losses. I was there shortly after because I got called up from AAA at the time. Got to play for Cal Senior, played for Frank Robinson, played for Johnny Oates. So we had this kind of revolving door at manager. The one constant we had, Junior. Cal Jr. And so every inning I ever pitched, he was in my shortstop. And man, that's a really nice comfort, knowing that you got a guy like that back there. What a great guy to play with. Certainly the highlight of my career was being his teammate. Can't say enough great things about Cal. Certainly fun to be around, and a really, really good teammate. So.
Manny?
I got kind of I guess more of a personal type question. There's a couple stadiums that I played in. I believe you may have either played in them or at least been to them. There was War Memorial Stadium in Buffalo. I believe that the AAA team played at that stadium for a while. And of course, there was the Cobb Field in Billings. Two great games. I think back on those days. Cobb's no longer there. And of course, the AAA team now in Buffalo plays in a brand new stadium. What do you think if you played in those? What do you think about those two fields?
Well, the War Memorial never got a plan. They already built that new stadium, and I don't know if they've got a second new stadium since I was there. But playing in there in '93 in Buffalo, and then a little bit in '94. I love Buffalo, but I didn't get to play in War Memorial. Cobb Field, on the other hand, is the field I grew up in. So playing Legion baseball here in Billings, Montana, Cobb Field was our home field. So lots of great memories down there. It is no longer in existence. We have a new stadium here built in 2007, I think. So Cobb Field had a good run. Really interesting history. The name Cobb comes from a guy from Billings named Cobb, and is the same guy that invented the Cobb salad. He was the owner of the Brown Derby, the famous restaurant in L.A. Was a guy from Billings named Cobb. So really interesting history with that old park.
War Memorial, they had
sorry.
The movie The Natural was filmed in that stadium. It was pretty cool. But I know the Pirates played there because I remember watching Tony Pena play there when he was in AAA. So it's pretty interesting. Thank you.
Paul, go ahead.
Now, if I got a quick two-parter, because you'll know the answer to both these immediately, but I read an article where you struck out our manager of the Marlins, Don Mattingly, 3 times, and then you were voted top 50 most popular Orioles. I mean, both prestigious, but what does Jeff Ballard look back on his career and say he's the most proud of? And the second part of that is, when you had your starts, who were you marking off on the calendar as a batter you just didn't want to face?
That's about a 4-part question, but that's all right. I'll try to get through it all. Well, Mattingly is certainly a highlight. He's a hard guy to strike out, and to do it 3 times in one game was a thrill. I remember it very well, and I knew he wasn't very happy about it. He was so pissed off after the game, and we played them shortly, not too long later, a few weeks later, back in Baltimore, and the reporters were wanting to make a big deal of that, and that he was really gunning for me and all that. I didn't want Don Mattingly gunning for me, but certainly it was fun to strike him out 3 times. As far as it's hard to pinpoint. My career was such a different career in my mind than maybe most. I mean, I had the highs and the lows. I got to see the the top when I won 18 games. You talk about, how you get on the wrong list when you're the number one starter and you pitch against all the number one starters. Well, I was the fifth starter coming out of spring training in '89, and the way the days off worked, my first start, I didn't pitch for like 17 days from my last outing in spring training to my first start in the season, and it had to fall on everybody else's number one day. So my first start in April, I went 5-0 and beat everybody else's number one, which was crazy, thinking about, because I hadn't done anything at the time. I mean, I was lucky to be on the team and hadn't done anything very special. But to start off that year in '89 with a very special group of guys that year that just molded together, I think if I look back that year, certainly from the unexpected nature of it, and the Why Not video does a really good job of explaining that season. And I got young kids, right? I started late in life with kids. I got to show them that video here not that long ago, and I think my son's watched it 3 or 4 times since then. Thinks it's just pretty cool to see. But it was a special year, and I think really what I liked is the Orioles had been so bad since their World Series win in '83, and to be on the team that kind of brought baseball back to the limelight in Baltimore after having just such bad teams in the previous 3 years, that the Oriole fans just really fell in love with us, and I happened to be part of that. So in answer to your top 50 Oriole deal, I think a lot of the reasons that I was a fan favorite was because I was part of that team. Certainly not necessarily my stats. My stats aren't very good overall, but that year I was good, and I had a team that played defense behind me. And as it's been throughout my whole career, I was kind of always a reflection of how my teams played. If I was on a good team, I excelled and did my job and pitched well and won. And if I was on a bad team, I wasn't Nolan Ryan. I didn't. Steve Carlton was a great example of that. And with that bad Philly team winning over half their games, that wasn't me. I wasn't going to carry you, but man, I could be a great part of the story for any good team. And that was kind of really how my career went. I look at it. I was incredibly dominant in the minor leagues, and all the way through even AAA. I mean, my AAA numbers are phenomenal. So I kind of refer to myself as a AAA and a half guy. I was better than AAA, but getting to the big leagues was just probably a little beyond me until I finally learned how to play. And that was it towards the last couple of years. In '93 and '94, I really started having a comfort factor mentally about being, in the big leagues and what my job was and how I could have success. Unfortunately, I was on a team that probably didn't fit me well with the Pirates at the time, although I really enjoyed Jim Leland. But and then I had a car wreck that kind of ended everything in January '95. So I probably had a couple good years left that I really, as I look back, would have liked to have been somebody's fifth starter, because I knew I could give you 6-7 innings consistently and keep the game, keep you in the game. I just knew I had it at the time to be able to do that, but I just never got the opportunity to. But a lot of great memories. To go from 18 wins to 2, a lot of tough times.
Yeah.
From '89 to '90, I had some elbow issues that really weren't very well defined publicly, but I certainly the deal. If I had something to do all over again, I would have never been the player rep. Kind of got thrown into that position because I was a Stanford grad. The players on the team were like, I'd come off 18 wins and they're, let Stanford do it. He can let him be the player rep. I mean, it should have been Cal, because at the time the owners and the players weren't getting along great, and really not a place for me. Some young punk kid, that hadn't done anything yet really, but have one good year, is all of a sudden the player rep for the Baltimore Orioles. I'm in New York, one of the faces of the lockout in '90 on the Today Show and all these other things, because I could speak. So the unions pushing me out, that didn't help my career any. When I started struggling, and it was easy to put the thumb on me. I really think that being a player rep was not probably the best thing. The one regret I would have had as far as the game goes, I would have declined that if I had that to do all over again. So long-winded, lots of stuff in there, but get me going, man. How long do you got?
It's a podcast. We can go all night, but. So I want to ask you about 1984, the World Cup of Baseball. You're playing with guys like Will Clark and Mark McGwire out there. I mean, was there something maybe that you learned from playing with like those caliber players, or maybe from the manager that, helped you in your career later on, and, just talk about that team maybe a little bit.
Yeah, actually, the whole experience of USA Baseball started for me in '83. I got to be on the USA team, the Pan American Games team in '83, and played with a lot of really good players there, and got to travel around the world all summer in '83 after my sophomore year of pitching at Stanford. And that led me to actually getting on the '84 team, which was after the Olympics. I didn't quite have the credentials maybe to make the Olympic team, although I might have been a little bit part of the conversation. But after the Olympics were over in '84, they were looking to put another team together to go to Cuba to play the Intercontinental Cup, and so I was able to get on that team. I'd say those 2 years were just really great in the experience of the game and playing all over the world, and seeing the great international players and seeing how guys do it differently. And then also just experiencing the great talent across the country with all the different guys that we played. And also I throw into that, being in the Pac-10 back in those days was Barry Bonds was at USC, Mike Devereaux's at Arizona State, Mike Devereaux's at Arizona State, Odie McDowell was at Arizona State. You had Mark McGuire at USC, Randy Johnson at USC. You had guys all over the league that were future Hall of Famers and incredible players. So you wrap all that up into, the experience factor really, allowed me to get into the minor leagues. That's the caliber I'm playing against. And then you get to the minor leagues and you wonder why it's easy. Well, you're not playing against those guys at rookie ball and at A ball. You're playing against a lot of good players, but not teams loaded with that kind of talent. So I think it all added up. The one note of interest in winning a bronze, I got to shake Fidel Castro's hand, and I would say that was one of the more intimidating things that I ever had to do or got to do, because you knew who he was, you knew what came with that, from the history of everything in Cuba, and it was just like, whoa, it was crazy, really crazy.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I've only fanboyed over a couple people on this show. You, Sid Bream, and Darren Pupa from the NHL. You guys are my fanboys. I know when I emailed you, I talked about I used to use you in my baseball game. The card.
That cracks me up. Yeah.
So,
I still, my kids have a little figurine that they used to sell that I had a couple extra left, and they use that to, throw around the house now. So
nice. Well, I want to remind everybody to subscribe to the YouTube channel, join the Facebook group, and, just another big thanks to Jeff Ballard for joining us tonight. So thank you and good night.